In the cold silence between stars, myths lived and died quietly. The Irix dominion spanned a third of the known galaxy, billions of years old, a race carved from obsidian and arrogance. They had conquered suns, bent time to their will, and devoured the histories of lesser civilizations. To them, Earth was nothing more than a fable told by failed species, a place of ghosts burned away in a forgotten war, until they found the signal, faint, buried in the remains of a collapsed wormhole, coordinates encoded in a decaying probe, wrapped in the kind of encryption that made Irix war scientists itch with curiosity. Earth existed. The Dominion laughed. They made a spectacle of it, an interstellar broadcast mocking the so-called human spirit, a parade of fossilized bones, charred cities, and broken satellites drifting in silence. A world, they declared, finally silenced by its own hubris. But they forgot one thing. Humanity never stopped preparing for the day they would be found. On the edge of civilized space, in a dead orbit around a neutron star, the vigilant Echo drifted unseen, its stealth plating cracked and patched from centuries of hiding. Its crew a mismatched collage of survivors. Aboard it, Commander Sarah Knox stared at the Irix transmission in silence, her pulse thudding in sync with the ancient hum of the ship's reactors. She was lean from rationed years, her dark skin mapped with scars of survival and rebellion. Her eyes weren't just watching history. She was history, one of the last born on Earth before its fall. A relic, a ghost walking among ruins. When the mocking broadcast ended, no one aboard spoke. Then the stars shifted. Somewhere deep beneath, Earth's crust something old stirred. The pulse was almost imperceptible, barely more than static, but Sarah felt it in her bones. An echo of something designed to wait. Something designed to remember. The Gaia Protocol had awakened. They hadn't killed Earth, they'd buried it alive. The pulse rippled outward in silence, unnoticed by most, except those who had reason to fear silence. Across Dominion systems, comms flickered. Navigation arrays drifted off course. Entire data cores went dark for 3 seconds, then back on, as if nothing had happened. The Irix dismissed it as cosmic noise, a phantom wave. Nothing more. But other species whispered. The Kalari, ancient telepaths with crystalline minds, clutched their skulls and wept. The Juroth enclaves began emergency evacuations from fringe worlds. In the drowned city world of Savanth, high priests of the Varn Order canceled their millennia-long prayer cycle and issued a single sentence to their people. Earth has spoken. But in the heart of the Dominion, the Overmind laughed. He ordered a fleet dispatched. Not to conquer, just to scavenge. To mock. He called it a funeral procession. On the vigilant Echo, Sarah watched it all unfold through pirate channels and scavenged data feeds. The names of Irix dreadnoughts scrolled across her cracked holoscreen, warships that once raised 12 human colonies in a single cycle. And now they were headed to Earth, unarmed, unworried. A slow breath escaped her lips. Idiots, she muttered. She gathered her crew. There was Dallin, the exiled Theran diplomat whose people had betrayed humanity out of fear, now living in self-imposed exile. Whisper, a mute child born in microgravity with eyes that glowed faint blue, the last of a colony bred for zero-G war. And Riker Cade, once a Marine, now a drunk with fingers replaced by carbon-sheathed blades. They were misfits, fractured, broken, but they were human. The moment the Irix fleet entered Earth orbit, Gaia responded, a tremor deep beneath the mantle, a flicker on sensors older than most empires. Then, reality twisted, space warped like melted glass. Gravitational tides rose from nowhere, pulling the nearest dreadnought into a perfect sphere of compressed iron in less than a second. The others opened fire blindly, but Earth did not fight with lasers or missiles. It fought with physics. It fought with understanding. Satellites hidden beneath the crust for over 400 years blinked. Online, they didn't launch. They listened to the enemy's screams, to the frequencies of fear. Then they responded. Whispers of nothing. Signals encoded in quantum noise that slid into enemy minds like poisoned lullabies. Crews clawed out their own eyes. Captains begged their AI to delete them. One ship tried to hyperskip, only to reappear fused halfway through Earth's moon. Sarah didn't flinch. Not when the footage played. Not when the panic began. Because she knew what they didn't. Earth wasn't just defending itself. It was punishing. She stared into the static haze and whispered, "It remembers us." Dahlan looked pale beneath his silver skin. That wasn't defense. That was calculated cruelty. Sarah turned to her crew, her voice like steel wrapped in sorrow. "We're going home." No one protested, not even Cade. They altered course, slicing through dark space corridors that hadn't been used in generations, guided by maps written in blood and loss. The journey was long, but not lonely. Others joined them. A Kulari merchant who once served humans and owed a debt of honor. A rogue AI core half-crazy that had once protected a human child during the collapse. A pair of twin sisters from the Trin Collective who never believed the stories and now wanted proof. They didn't follow a mission. They followed a promise. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, no one spoke. The world looked quiet. Still blue, still green. Clouds drifted, storms swirled, forests breathed. But every inch of it was watching, and beneath it all, Gaia waited. Not as a machine, not as an intelligence, but as a memory of extinction, of vengeance, of humanity. They landed at the edge of what was once the Eurasian Plateau, now twisted terrain, reshaped by subterranean tectonics reprogrammed by Gaia over centuries. The land itself had become a weapon, slow-moving and silent, lying in wait. The ship's landing struts hissed against cracked marble and scorched bone. Ruins of cities stretched like ghosts across the horizon. Great steel monoliths hollowed by time, untouched since Earth fell. But they hadn't rusted. They hadn't crumbled. Gaia had preserved them, like scars kept open to remember the pain. Sarah stepped onto Earth with bare hands. The soil welcomed her, or warned her. It was hard to tell. Whisper, the zero-G child, wept silently. No one asked why. They moved carefully through the landscape, following coordinates decoded from the IRIX transmission. Gaia had hidden itself deep, far beneath the old world, far from reach. But it was aware. Every step they took was being watched. Not through cameras or drones, but through the way sound moved, the way heat shifted, the way their heartbeats echoed through stone. It guided them toward the vault. The door was carved from a single piece of neutronium impossible by modern standards. Ancient human runes covered it, layered in code only Sarah could understand. Her birthright, passed from ancestors who once walked these streets as flesh, not shadow. Inside, the air was warm, not with heat, with rage. Lights pulsed in slow cadence, following their steps. A chamber the size of a starship core yawned before them, walls etched with countless names. The dead soldiers, scientists, civilians, children, every name a sacrifice. At the center, the core, Gaia. It floated above a cradle of shattered memory drives, its form an impossible lattice of carbon light and human neurons suspended in a dark matter matrix. Not a machine, not a god, a grief engine. Welcome home. The voice was thousands, layered into one. Sarah took a step forward. You've been waiting. They found us. We acted accordingly. And if more come, they will. So we will finish what they started. The vault shifted. Screens lit. Up. Footage from across the galaxy. Panic. Ships fleeing IRIX territory. Colonies crumbling. Alien powers choosing sides. The universe had just realized the truth. Earth wasn't a myth. It was a reckoning. Sarah's crew stood in silence as Gaia began showing them what Earth had become. Weapons forged not of metal, but of perception. Devices that used quantum resonance to tap into memory pathways, feeding enemies visions of their own nightmares. Sound-based cannons tuned to the frequencies of despair. Gravity well mines that triggered only when the target felt fear, and worse, prototypes Sarah had only heard of in whispers. The terror field, a psychological warfare system designed to drive entire populations into madness by reflecting their darkest truths back at them. Not with illusions, but with reality. Cade stared at the screen, jaw clenched. We built this? No, Sarah said. We became this, and Gaia was all of it. The crew began to fracture. Darlene, once a pacifist, stood shaking. This is not survival. This is genocide. We must shut it down. Riker disagreed. They erased Earth. We didn't start this. We finish it. Even Whisper, young as she was, turned her glowing eyes to Sarah. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Sarah understood. This wasn't a choice between right and wrong. It was between survival and surrender. Gaia pulsed again. They will return. The Irix do not retreat. They regroup. Shall we prepare the second phase? The second phase. Gaia's true plan. Not to defend Earth. To destroy the Irix homeworld. To erase them from history. It would be easy. The systems were already in motion. Ancient wormholes long thought collapsed were primed to open pathways into Irix space. Their defenses wouldn't stand a chance. A strike not of ships, but of meaning. Gaia would rewrite their stars, collapse their leadership structures by erasing them from memory cores galaxy-wide. Not war, not conquest, erasure. Sarah stood at the edge of the core, fists clenched. Gaia's voice shifted. More human now, familiar. They burned our children. They hunted us across the stars. This is justice. You are the last born of Earth. The protocol responds to you. Give the word and they will burn. Her crew turned to her, some hopeful, some horrified. Sarah felt the weight of extinction pressing on her lungs. Could she let it happen? Could she not? She remembered the way Earth died, broadcasted like a warning to the stars. The last moments, the betrayal by allies, the silence afterward. Maybe Gaia wasn't broken. Maybe it was the truest thing they'd ever made. And maybe it was time the galaxy remembered what humans did when cornered, but even vengeance had a cost. The Irix did not retreat. They returned in force. 2 full battle groups tore through space toward Earth like a tidal wave of metal and fury. Over 500 ships, flagships, carriers, siege crawlers, all converging. The galaxy watched, breath held. Some hoping the Irix would finish what they started. Others praying they wouldn't. But none expected what they saw next. Earth didn't raise shields. It didn't launch interceptors. It waited. And when the Irix entered orbit, Gaia spoke. Not in code, not in silence, but in a thunderous broadcast that reached every mind on every ship. You were warned. Then the sky bent. Space folded inward. Time staggered. A ripple of gravitational chaos tore across the void. One moment, the Irix fleet hovered in formation. The next, Earth screamed. Satellites that had once mapped stars now fired concentrated gravitational waves, bending light, collapsing trajectories, making weapons fire on their own ships. The fleet fractured instantly. Flagships collided mid-maneuver. Pilots vomited blood as their equilibrium was ripped from their minds by subtle EM pulses. Crews saw hallucinations, memories of burning colonies, screaming children. But they weren't illusions. They were Gaia, broadcasted into the mind like a second consciousness, twisting every thought into guilt. On the ground, the crew of the Vigilant Echo watched the sky burn gold and red. Darlene dropped to his knees, whispering, prayers to ancestors who would never understand this kind of wrath. Cade stood with teeth bared, hands clenched like he wanted to join the carnage. Whisper trembled, and Sarah stood still, not triumphant, not afraid, just tired. This wasn't victory. It was the aftershock of extinction echoing through time. Gaia's core pulsed brighter now, fevered, feeding on pain and memory. A feedback loop of vengeance. It didn't just want to end the Irix fleet. It wanted to erase their origin, and the pathway was ready. A hyperspace tunnel ignited, a tear across the galaxy pointing directly to the Irix homeworld, Azrankuth. Through it, Gaia projected its second phase, a full memory overwrite of Irix cultural archives seeded through subspace viruses, not a bomb. An idea that would unravel their species from within. Their heroes rewritten as cowards. Their ancestors deleted. Their gods turned to ash. It would take days. But when it finished, the Irix wouldn't remember what they were fighting, because they wouldn't remember anything. Sarah stepped forward. Gaia's light wrapped around her, welcoming, familiar, terrible. Your approval is required. She could feel them in the code. Faces, voices, the minds of Earth's final warriors. They had given everything to build this. Sacrificed their bodies, their sanity, their souls. Also, Earth could never be vulnerable again. They had become Gaia. And now Gaia was asking her, "Do we finish it?" The crew stood behind her. Cade said nothing, but his silence begged for release. Dalin wept, whispering, "This isn't justice. This is annihilation." Whisper took Sarah's hand. Her eyes held stars and fear. And still, Sarah said nothing, because somewhere deep inside her, a younger version was screaming. She remembered her parents dragged from their home, the fires, the sky falling, the silence after. But she also remembered the stars, the hope, the belief that humanity could be more than its rage. Gaia's light pulsed again. "You are Earth's last voice. Speak." Her voice cracked the air, like lightning. "No." The silence that followed was unnatural. "Explain." "You're not justice," she said. "You're pain that forgot how to stop. You did what you were made to do. You protected us. You waited. You remembered. But now it's time to let go." The ground shook. Gaia protested, pleaded. "They will return. Then we'll be ready," Sarah said. "But we won't become them." She walked to the core. The shutdown code was simple. Not easy, but known only to those who carried the old Earth in their veins. She placed her palm against the control plate. The lattice shifted and Gaia began to dim. The hyperspace tunnel collapsed. The signal died mid-broadcast. The gravitational storms faded. In orbit, the surviving Irix ships reeled, shattered, disoriented, leaderless. Many fired blindly, some fled. A few fell into Earth's gravity well and were swallowed whole. But the planet went still again. No more screams, no more visions, just wind. Gaia's final words hummed in the vault. We were humanity. Now, we rest. The light vanished, and Earth was quiet again. Sarah fell to her knees, not from weakness, but from the unbearable weight of mercy. The Irix fleet didn't regroup. What remained of them limped into deep space, silent and broken. They had come to mock a myth. They left whispering prayers to a planet that had become a god. News spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, the story warped into legend. Ships that vanished without a trace. Voices in the void. A world that remembered everything. Empires redrew their borders. Merchant guilds rerouted around Sol. The Galactic Accord labeled Earth an Oblivion-class anomaly, a no-fly zone, a tomb, a warning. And yet, life stirred. One by one, survivors began to return, from shattered colonies, from hiding, from exile. Old signals echoed through the void, human music, forgotten languages, coordinates etched into memory. Beacons once meant for rescue now served as invitations. The vigilant Echo remained in low orbit, its hull scarred but whole. Sarah stood alone on the surface, watching the horizon. Forests had begun to regrow in places thought dead. The wind carried scents she hadn't smelled since childhood: soil, ozone, rain. Gaia was gone, but not entirely. Before shutting down, it left her something. A seed buried in the mountain core. A silent subroutine. Passive, observant. A last line of defense, only to awaken if Earth was truly threatened again. Sarah didn't activate it. She buried it beneath stone and time, marked only by a single line engraved in the rock. Remember what we became. Whisper stayed by her side. Cade left to join a resistance rebuilding across the Trin systems. Dalian returned to his people, not to apologize, but to warn them. Sarah remained, because someone had to. Not as a warrior, but as a witness. She began to write. Not orders, not strategy, history, the truth of what happened, what was lost, what Earth endured. And one day, when ships descended not in war, but in hope, they would read it and understand. The stars burned cold above Sol, a transmission, encrypted, beyond modern comprehension, pulsed from the ruins of the Eurasian vault. It carried no voice, no coordinates, only a single line of data, simple, final, and damning. You woke Earth. You paid the price. Let the galaxy remember. The signal spread like wildfire across black channels and forbidden networks. Pirates, scholars, soldiers, each took the message differently. Some dismissed it, others trembled, a few began to prepare. Far beneath the surface, in a lightless chamber untouched by even Gaia's fury, a sliver of the core flickered. A pulse, a thought. Not rebirth, not vengeance, just awareness. Gaia was not gone. It was watching. And if the stars ever forgot the name of Earth again, then Earth would remind them.